Welcome to Napa and another Vintec Club experience. We're here at the Davis Estates Vineyard and Winery here in the beautiful Napa Valley. We're at the north end of the valley right now in the Calistoga region. And we're getting ready to start off and have about an hour's worth of wine tasting with you guys with two delicious wines. We're going to do a Chardonnay and we're going to do a beautiful Cabernet. Want to say hi right now to Fort Mill, South Carolina, Bend, Oregon, Charlotte, Modesto, San Jose, Napa, Roseville, California. So many people are on the call right now. Just so everybody knows, we are live. We're doing these pre-recorded packages to sort of give you guys the story of the back scene that we can't show you right now. We want to share this place with you. We're really trying to bring Napa to you. And so this is our shot at it. So wanted to remind you a couple of things. Wine tasting is a process. I like to go through this with you guys before we get started. The process that we're going to go through tonight, I call it the 5 S's. Just briefly, we'll cap this. A lot of you guys already know this, but I want to bring this up for folks that, might be a little bit new to wine tasting. So what we do is the 5 S's are see, swirl, sniff, sip, and savor. So in that order, we're going to go look at this. So if you haven't poured your glasses already, go ahead and put your Chard in the glass. Pour a couple of ounces so that way we all get a couple of tastes as we go through this evening. We're going to do the Chard first, and it's okay to go ahead and open up and pour some of the Cab as well because it likes to open up and breathe a little bit. So let's start with the seeing it. We're going to notice this Cabernet is a beautiful gold. Chardonnays. Chardonnays typically are going to be kind of a golden color versus say a Sauvignon Blanc, which is a little lighter. Swirl it around. This gives some oxygen in there. And then smell it. Just whatever you smell. Just sort of let it go into your think tank. And I'm catching a little bit of apples, a little bit of vanilla, a little bit of caramel almost. But it's really, really delicious. Now let's go ahead and take a sip. Let's get started on this. We're going to taste this wine for a while. So sip it, hold it in your mouth before you swallow it, and then we're going to savor it. Sip it. Wow. I bet you people that don't even really say, I don't care for Chardonnay that much, I bet you're finding this one extraordinarily good. There's only a few cases of this. They make very little here. It's kind of a limited edition. Anyway, this is going to get us started. So start talking amongst yourselves, sipping and taking some notes. When we come back, we're going to be joined by the owner here, Mike Davis, who started all this stuff, and he's going to join us. And we're going to walk through and talk through some more great tasting notes on amazing Chardonnay. So let's get started right now. Northern California's Napa Valley is undoubtedly one of the most recognized and revered wine regions in the world, but it wasn't always like that. Napa Valley is one of over 140 AVAs, or appellations, here in California. And within the Napa Valley AVA, there are 16 sub-appellations, which is a reflection of the diversity of soil types, elevation, slope, temperature ranges, and a host of other features we all know as terroir. From Carneros in the southern end of the valley, known for its cooler influences from the San Francisco Bay, where Chardonnay and Pinot Noir grow best, to the warmer, hilly terrain to the north in the Calistoga, Rutherford, and Howell Mountain regions, known for their Bordeaux and Rhone varietals like Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Petit Syrah, Cabernet Franc, and Petit Verdot. As famous as Napa is, its total wine production accounts for just 4% of California's wine industry. And as we'll discover, this special place can produce some very special wines.
There's a lot of topsoil that comes out of the hills, goes into that Rutherford Valley. It's very, very rich. And so you can smell kind of that, deep, rich, kind of dark black cherry.
Black cherry, some spice, and almost there's a licorice almost there in that. A big part of what makes a place special, besides the natural beauty, is the people. The community of people who call this place home, who work here, and who care for the land. So get ready for a special Vintec Club experience and enjoy the people, the place, and the wine here at Davis Estates in Calistoga. And I want to sort of wrap this part up by touching on some of the front line players here, your winemakers.
So Carrie Gott is our winemaker for Davis Estates. Carrie and I had a phone call back in 2011, got to know each other, and got along famously, and he's a pretty famous winemaker here in the valley.
Yeah.
His son's probably more famous, Joel Gott wines.
Yeah, Joel.
But Carrie's fourth generation winemaker, Joel's fifth generation. Right. And Carrie understands what we wanted to accomplish as far as, make the best grapes and the best wine we can from our sources here in both Napa Valley and both down in Carneros as well.
Wine has been around for thousands of years, and you're still in essence doing it the same way. And we've got these the farmland out here that grows the vineyards, and the people that are the farmers, that's a whole other aspect that we could cover. The winemaking process, and then the perfect natural place to store it in the cave. What a great combo.
We're Napa Green, which means we're fish friendly, and we try to be a good neighbor and a good environmentalist. We have 24 bat houses on the grounds where the bats eat the mosquitoes and bugs and things like that.
Well, we're getting ready to have some food brought into us, and we're going to try to pair some of these with some of the not appetizers, but bites, as you call them.
Small bites.
So we have a prime New York strip loin of beef, arugula salad with a little lemon, olive oil, Davis Estates olive oil, and some haricots verts with shallots and garlic. And then we have a truffle hollandaise and some creamy Yukon Gold potatoes.
You can't really beat this. I mean, great hospitality, great food, and amazing wine, and great friends. I mean, this is what wine and the lifestyle really is all about, is coming together with people that you either know or you get to know in a beautiful place, and be able to admire other people's work and then try the fruits of their labor. And we're going to enjoy some of this wine and food right now. All right, you guys, we are live right now in northern Napa Valley in the Calistoga region. I'm Mike Wreyford, and I'm here with the Vintec Club Experience. We're sharing this with you guys in your homes right now. We wanted to bring Napa to you. I'm here with my co-host and owner of the Davis Estates, Mike Davis. Thanks so much, Mike, for having us here. This is a blast.
Oh, I'm glad you're having a great time. We're so happy to have you here and host you, and it should be a great event.
Well, what's fun is we've got about a couple of hundred people out there we're in your living rooms and offices right now. We're really stoked to be here. We got another Redwood City, somebody is that Hercules and Sonoma and Sydney, Australia. Heck, that's a lot of time zones away. Thanks, Sydney. G'day. So right on. So we're going to start off with a little Chardonnay. And we already talked about the 5 S's, so we're there already by now. But Mike's going to walk us through. I want to get some, right from the heart of the matter. What's this guy think of Chardonnay and what gets him to make this wine? We've already gotten a lot of comments from Ben and a bunch of different people that are, what's the business school guy? Somebody about this is an unusual Chard in that it's not as strong as a lot of Napa Chards and things like that. So there's a bit of finesse. Yeah, this is not your typical Napa Chard. By the way, Napa is known for its Chardonnay and its Cabernet Sauvignon, right?
Absolutely.
And so we're really trying the king and queen here of the wines, the whites and the reds. And I know a lot of you guys aren't big white fans initially, but it's hard to deny a great wine. If you're a wine lover, you're ready for a new nice wine. So Mike, onto this Chardonnay. I know that you've told us about in Carneros, which is in the southern end of the valley, and It's much cooler because of the San Pablo Bay. All those cool influences are what makes the grape ripen in a certain way that give it characteristics. And then you hooked up with an amazing winemaker, Carrie Gott. And how did you I say develop the style that you're interested in here. I know the wine speaks, or the grapes sort of speak for themselves, but you guys sort of steer it in a direction or two.
Well, you can manipulate the taste by, how long you leave the vines or the clusters on the vine. As the sugars go up, you'll increase the alcohol and the sugar content. So we like to pick these between 23 and 22 bricks, because that allows it to have some acidity, crispness, not too sweet. And then we'll go ahead and ferment it for about 4 weeks. What we'll do in that process is, in the fermentation process, we'll use a combination of stainless steel, we'll use oak, and we'll also use concrete. And so it gives it a blend of tastes. And then after that, what we'll do is we'll put it in primarily about 45% new oak, but then about 55% of what we call used oak or neutral oak.
Right.
And so that allows it to ferment, cure, and age in a mild way. So it's got brightness, it's got acidity to it. It doesn't have that big butterball, fruit ball sugar that some of the wines, some people like those.
Yeah.
Personally, I prefer something with a little more crispness, a little more sharpness, because it goes better with food.
I agree. So for you guys that are interested in the sort of the geek part of this thing, when he's just talking about making the wines in the cement, the stainless, and the oak, and then they're all made individually, then they're blended together to give it this balance, so that way you don't get an over-oaked one. And after a couple of years of barrel use, they call it neutral, but still there's a finesse that the oak barrel seems to give to the wine. And you'll notice that on your palate. It's very smooth, and it's just got a nice mouthfeel, as they say. And we also noticed, Mike, in your cellar today, we were back in the cellar. We're going to see some cellar pictures in our next package. And just to remind you guys, we're live right now. We're catching all your comments. So thank you very much for joining in on this. This is great. Jessica showed us one of the demo barrels that you've got. You're actually aging Chardonnay in an oak barrel,
yes,
but it's got a plexiglass end on it, so we could see the actual wine in there. And the interesting thing is the lees. You can see the lees. So for those that don't know, the lees are the yeast that have sort of done their thing, and as they sort of die, they go to the bottom. But there's a thing called stirring the lees. And when you stir the lees, it just, over time, it gives the wine this really creamy effect and just a really great mouthfeel. So that's one of your techniques that you guys use here.
We do. We'll stir the leaves about once a week. And as you said, it blends it up. I've always been curious what it looked like during fermentation.
Mm-hmm.
So we had somebody build a plexiglass end cap for us, and we put it on the barrel, and then we backlit it so that we could see what that looks like. And it's fascinating, because after about a week, you can see the leaves settle to the bottom, and that's why we've got to stir those back up. So,
right. So we have a question from Ingmar about surprised that we store it in concrete. We don't store it in concrete. We ferment it in concrete. And it's amazing, because if you think back in the ancient times of wine, these were all done in amphora, which amphora were just big clay jugs, right?
Yes.
So cement or concrete, I guess would be the real word, is more or less a way to replicate the amphora thing. And without getting too geeky, part of the magic, I guess, of making wine is that the oxygen goes both ways, through the barrel and through the pores of the barrel in a very microscopic way, as well as that's what cement is so good. Stainless, yes, is definitely no oxygen getting in or out of that, but that's what the cement, and they call them concrete eggs. There's a whole process of things like that. Will wants to know, oh yeah, tell us about the jukebox, Mike. He's a collector of, he's got one in his office as well.
you can see that back there, huh?
Yeah.
It is a 1945 1015 Wurlitzer bubble machine, and we've had it restored so that it plays 45s, and it's loaded with records from the 40s and 50s, and I was born in 1951, so
right,
wanted to bring one of those in here.
Very cool.
We have a lot of things in here. We have a 1909 Wing & Sons piano that I had restored, and then we use modern technology. We put a player unit in it that's all voice activated. So it's kind of like you actually play the Notre Dame fight song, and it'll play the Notre Dame fight song.
It's funny, between shows, this is our second live show of the evening. We did one for the East Coast, and now we're doing this for the West Coast. So we have the same format, but obviously our conversation is a little bit different. But in between the shows, somebody said something over there near the piano, and I guess it was Alexa started talking back to us. So
Yep, it's all based on Alexa. So you have
funny.
a 1909 technology tied into a 2020 technology.
Right. Well, we do have some geeks out there, so right on, Daryl. We love it, man. I'll get a little bit deeper into that as we get into the cabs and get further down the road. That's really awesome.
So one of the things I wanted to talk about the Chardonnay, since they've asked, is that we don't let this go through what they call malolactic. So you've got lactic acid in there, and as you let it go, if malolactic takes over, it gives it that big popcorn buttery taste. We stop that, and that's where that brightness and that crispness comes from, is not allowing it to go through malolactic.
Yeah, that is definitely what when you're thinking of the 70s and the 80s and those really big classic butter bombs, as they're called, that was the whole deal, mallow, that's the whole thing. But we've shifted. I mean, there's even unoaked, there's a lot of unoaked shards, and there's a market for everything. And I think it's not even a market. I think people's taste just change, and they want to experiment and try different things. Unoaked is really, really good, like when you're having like a beach clam bake and stuff like that. It really goes great with food because there's just not a lot of, there's a lot of acidity, and therefore it sort of strips that fat away like a nice cab would do.
It does.
So what else about Carneros? I know the soil is really unique as well. I was wondering, is there something, if we had a Carneros and a Russian River and maybe a Willamette Valley Chardonnay here, is there something that we could help identify what a Carneros, say, something that would identify it as Carneros?
If you go back 100 million years ago, it was all under the ocean. And so there's a lot of sand and small particles in that Carneros soil. It's not like it is in northern Napa, where you've got big rocks, and some of those rocks are as big as a piano, where it's a lot different soil content. So the combination of the weather, the soil, and also, like you'd mentioned, the fog coming in and cooling it down has an effect as well. So Chardonnay and Pinot Noir grow very well down in that Carneros region.
And if you guys haven't been out here, San Pablo Bay is just down the road here. And then that also is part of the greater San Francisco Bay. And as you drive through there, like going to Vallejo from Novato or something, you sort of smell, especially at a low tide, this really sort of salt flats, I call it.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of that almost saltiness that comes through here.
I think it has an effect.
Yeah.
And you pick up on those little hints, and it's like anything else. They have vanilla and chocolate ice cream because people don't like just vanilla. So
exactly
there's
right.
all kinds of wines out there, and whatever kind of floats your boat.
Exactly. Well, speaking of food, what are some pairing ideas? We sent out in an email some simple things, and I hope you guys have some food there at home, but some nice baguettes, some cheeses. Oh yeah, this goes awesome with crab. This would be great. So Tammy wants to know about the crab. Dungeness is going on right now, by the way, out here in California. Wish you were here. So, but what are some other things that you would go with a Chardonnay? I mean, that's a great one. Scallops are great. Anything with a saucy, creamy sauce?
Creamy sauce or a little spicy. You could, sea bass, swordfish. I go up all the way up into like pork. And you can do a nice pork chop, some mint and things like that.
Great.
So yeah, that works as well.
Great.
I mean, these days there's no hard rule anymore. You can pretty much have wine with anything you want. I mean, you like probably Doritos and red wine. That goes great.
Yeah, it is. It really is, and that's part of the journey of wine. And this is part of what the Vintec Club experience is all about. We're really a wine community, and we're all about these units, which by the way, and behind us here, Mike's got his new V200 stacked with all kinds of awesome wines. And this thing is going to be living in the cave before we know it here. So
it's really cool.
Yeah, he loves it.
No pun intended.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, this is just a great experience to have the Vintec here. But what we do is, as a wine community, we get together and we do these wine tastings. Hopefully, we're going to be doing more live from these wineries, because it's a way to bring it to you guys at home. And thank you again for all your awesome comments, and we're going to keep them coming as we go along. But before we jump into the next segment, I wanted just to mention that, you know, the temperature is really key on storing wine, as well as the temperature of serving wine. And we talked about, and we're going to get more into the reds here in a minute, where we talk about aging a nice Cabernet for a long time in a nice unit like this, or in your wine cave. But Chardonnay can age as well. What are your thoughts on aging Chardonnay?
I would recommend, you know, buy a case and try a bottle every 6 months. So, because after about 6 years, it's probably peaked out.
Okay. There is sort of a bell curve when you get wine and it's young and you're trying it, you really like it, and then you try it maybe 6 months, like Mike said, later, and it's like, oh, I'm noticing some more caramel coming out, or some more, you know, different notes, more apple. And then 6 months later, it's a little bit different. So it's good to, if you do get a case, which is a great idea, and you do one every 6 months, you can sort of figure out where that peak is, and then you got to get to work, get going on some wine.
Or try it once a month, and you know, and then the next year comes out.
There you go. There you go. Well, listen, we're going to jump into one of the things that we talked about. We started in the vineyard, just like the wine does. It starts in the vineyard. The next place all the grapes end up is in the cellar. So let's go take a look at the cellar here at Davis Estates Winery, and just see how this stuff is made. Let's go. As every winemaker will tell you, the wine starts in the vineyard. That may be true, but it all ends up in the cellar. From bins freshly picked from the vineyards, many times at night to ensure coolness of the fruit, the grape's first stop is the destemmer, then onto the sorting table, and ultimately to the fermenting vats, where the yeast and the sugar from the fruit will combine and begin the fermentation process. There they will slowly evolve into the joy that is in our glasses right now. Crafting a great wine is similar, I suppose, to composing a great song, or creating an amazing original piece of art, or designing a building, or building the Golden Gate Bridge. The winemaker is guided by the materials and conditions he or she has to work with, then optimizes the conditions that will allow the wine to speak for itself, to express all that it has to offer from the conditions of the past year.
We designed a special place in the cave for what we call Phase 5. And we brought in Philippe Melka to make that wine.
Wow.
We only make 300 cases of Cabernet, and we make 150 cases of Petit Syrah, and we make 100 bottles of what we call Solarium, which is a Cabernet.
Are those the big format?
Yeah, that's a 1.5 liter, and it's a Cabernet Franc and a Petit Syrah combination, and it's a beautiful blend. But those are the only 3 wines that we make, and we decided to do that just to have something special down in there, and so we accomplished our goal.
In that cave, which we'll show you some pictures of later on, you left that one sort of alcove there where you could actually see this is what's right behind that wall right there. To me, I thought it was white crystal, but tell us what it actually is.
It took us about a year to dig 11,000 square feet of caves under here. And the reason you dig caves is that more economic, because after about 12 to 15 years, if you were to rent a building and pay for air conditioning to store your barrels, you'd spend more than you would if you dug the cave, and Mother Nature gives us 58 to 60 degrees for free.
Yeah.
So we did that, and then we got back to the back of the cave, and we hit this vein where it's a combination of volcanic ash, tufa, there's some quartz crystal veins, and it was just beautiful.
Yeah.
So we reinforced with steel the opening and concrete, but we left a little section in the back where you can see the swirl marks from the drill, just to show everybody what it looks like, number one. 2 is go back and put your hand on that, because you're 100 feet underground and 250 feet back into the earth, and you can feel the temperature Mother Nature gives us for free.
Well, what'd you think of that? That's an example of some amazing architecture, some amazing design, and a lot of experience that went into designing that place. Mike, you guys did a wonderful job there, and you were mentioning earlier about your architect. You were able to coordinate your architect with your winemaker so that you could design not just a place to make and store wine, but it was functional as well as aesthetic, but mostly it was functional. Tell us a little bit about that process.
Form and function are two different aspects that we looked at. Number one, we're farmers. We make a yummy, sexy product, but the reality is that in that process, we need to process that fruit.
Right.
So what we did is we designed it so that it had the ability to bring all of the tonnage in, ferment it, and then the caves would house the barrels. So the functionality is there. And then the aesthetics came in afterwards because we wanted to make it look pretty. And I like things just a little cleaner than a hospital. So, bacteria is not our friend. So
Right.
we want to keep everything nice and shiny and bright. And we also brought computers into it where we can monitor the fermentation process, where the sugar content, the alcohol content, the O2, the oxygen, the temperatures, and so we can do all the pump overs with iPhones.
Nice.
And what that allows us to do is we use 4 people to process about 200 tons rather than having 30 to 40 people on staff. So the labor is a lot less, and I think we make a better quality wine using and embracing technology.
I agree, and less intervention. There's less room for error there. Well, let's jump into this. If you haven't already, you've swirled and sniffed, and we're going to sip this. On the nose here, this is something like, and again, everybody's going to get a little bit different notification in their brain here. But as you're smelling this, I'm getting really rich blackberry, sort of almost blackberry jam, but not in a sweet jam, just like a compote or something. Definitely a bit of oak, and almost, I don't want to sound like that Sideways movie, a flutter of bacon grease or whatever. But no, there's some, whatever you get in the nose is what you are getting. Now sip it and see how that correlates with your brain. Let's have a sip. Wow. So there's something about a Napa Cab that's so distinctive. It just keeps on, the flavor just keeps on coming. Talk about a long finish. It's just amazing. Bernie wants to know why there's no distribution in Oregon. Bernie, they just don't make enough. But you can come down here, you can get it online, dude. We'd love you to order some wine. These guys will put you, go to davisestates.com.
Yeah, www.davisestates.com, and
give me a credit card and you got some wine.
And we'll ship you a pallet.
Absolutely. So this has all these classic notes of currant,
Yes.
cassis, blackberry, almost a mint or something, but then there's the tannin. So describe tannin. Some people think tannin is a flavor. It's really more of a mouthfeel, isn't it?
It's a mouthfeel and kind of a bitterness. And that's, in fact, it kind of dovetails into why we use oak to age things, is oak has this symbiotic relationship with wine, where oak says, well, I'm going to pull those tannins and some of that bitterness out, and then we're going to depart this caramel flavor with you. And so we use a French oak, which has a much tighter grain. It's also a lot more expensive. It's $1,500 a barrel for a 60-gallon barrel versus American oak, which is about $500 a barrel. But we think it makes a much better quality wine.
It definitely has what I would call almost a finesse to it. It's sort of like somebody wearing cologne that's just too loud. I love American oak for certain things like bourbons or scotches, and even some wines do okay in American oak if they're 10% of that mixed in with something more neutral. But American oak has definitely got some more pungency and more kick to it. So yeah, the French oak is definitely a lot more, approachable and more finesse. Nathan, you're right. It's got a huge long finish. Nathan just said it's got a great finish and it's a great cab. It is a great cab.
Thank you.
So we're in Napa. This is the epicenter of wine, isn't it?
I believe so, ever since 1976.
Yeah, after the Judgment of Paris. But you grew up in the Bay Area. You went to school back in Indiana. IU, by the way, he's an alum for any of you other Purdue fans out there. But at any rate, What you could have went anywhere in the world and started a winery.
Correct.
You could have been in Santa Barbara. You could have been in Temecula. You could have went to Willamette Valley. You could have went to Bordeaux. Why did you pick Napa?
First off, we used to spend our summers here and go camping. We didn't have any money, so we'd go camping.
Cool.
And as I grew up, took a date up here at 21 years old, and Napa's a lot more fun at 21 than it was at 11 years old camping.
Right.
You guys figure that out. Anyway, what happened is that I've always had a tie to Napa Valley because I grew up in this area.
You guys used to vacation at Berryessa Lake right up here, right?
Napa Valley Ranch Club.
Oh, right on.
Absolutely. And so what happened is when we sold a computer company, and I wasn't going to sit around and play checkers on the porch.
Right.
So we wanted to get into this business. I knew how to drink wine really well, but I didn't know how to make it. And so it was a business that is, on the surface, it's romantic. And if you're ever thinking about getting into it, it's a great cash flow model. You buy a piece of property, you put the plant in the ground, you wait 4 years to harvest it, you wait another 2 weeks to 3 or 4 weeks to ferment it, then 36 months in the barrel, 36 months in the barrel and 2 years on the shelf. So from the dollar you put in to the dollar you get out, it takes 10 years.
Yep.
So you better love what you're doing, and we really love what we do here. And so the goal was to try to make the best wine on this property, which I bought with my wife in 2011. It was in bankruptcy. It had belonged to a French family for over 100 years. And it just spoke to me, and we wanted to make the best wine we could, so we hired Carrie Gott to make our Davis Estates. We hired Philippe Melka to make what we call our Phase 5, which is our Colt Cabernet Sauvignon that we only make about 300 cases of Cabernet. And the ground itself here is unlike anything in really, except for maybe Bordeaux, is that a lot of volcanic ash, a lot of great soils.
And tufa you were talking about.
The tufa. So on this side of the valley, we have a lot of volcanic ash from Mount St. Helena that blew up 10 million years ago. On the Mayakama side, which is on the west side, that was brought up about 10 million years ago through the tectonic plates that came up, so very rocky. So you've got, from Spring Mountain all the way down to Oakville and beyond. So a lot of different microclimates, a lot of different soil samples, but the common thing is that during the day we get a lot of sunlight, and then in the evening we could have as much as a 50-degree swing in temperatures, so that it allows the vineyards to kind of go to sleep, recapture, come up with a new way to develop photosynthesis the next day when they wake up.
Right.
And it makes amazing wine. We only make 4% of the state of California's wine, 4% of the state of California, but 0.5% of the United States wine.
Yeah, there's a lot of wine made in California, and Mike's, obviously 100% right. I was going to mention that, but I mean, this is as epic as this place is, and as many wineries are here. I think right here there's at least 500 wineries just in this valley. And
528.
Right, and a number of them were damaged in the fire, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. We don't want to pass on that. That's coming up in our next segment, but we just want to keep it light and keep it real for the first moment. But what do you guys think of this cab? I know that we've got a couple of comments coming in out there that it's a nice smooth one. It's very rich. This cab, Mike does make a line, and I should have you tell us, but there's a single vineyard varietal like Howell Mountain, Oakville, Rutherford and Calistoga. And this one happens to be called Napa Valley because it's kind of a combination blend. I call this a friendly entry cab to Napa because this kind of gets your head situated around what to expect. But each of those as a standalone, if we had all 5 of those together and we could all taste them together, we would notice it's obviously a cab, but we'd notice these little nuances that were slightly different in each one. Some are a little dustier, some are a little more fruit forward, some have more acidity, some have more softer tannins, things like that. So where are we going next with this? Tell us about the regions that this specific blend. Oh, first, Purdue Boilers. What does that mean?
So
I have no idea.
So the Purdue has their mascot is the Boilermaker.
Okay.
The Hoosiers have that's their mascot, and to this day, I went on a scholarship there, and I still don't know what the hell a Hoosier is. But Indiana has Hoosiers. It's like who's your neighbor?
Right.
And then you've got the Buckeyes right there in Ohio. You've got Notre Dame in the same state which, by the way, they're just kicking butt in football this year.
Nice.
Should be them in Alabama.
Oh, see, there you go, guys. We got a lot of college alums out there. Tammy, well-bodied and smooth. Absolutely, Tammy, it is smooth. I mean, it doesn't have that big punch you don't have to chew on this one too much.
Right.
This is sort of
Right.
user-friendly cab. Well, anyway, I think where are we at with our time and everything is good here? So, yeah, so
one of the reasons that we make it like we do is the American public wants to buy the wine and drink it tonight.
right.
So unlike a European wine where they pick it with a lot less sugars and a lot more tannins and bitterness, and then it needs to sit on the shelf for 5 years or 10 years, we set it up so that it's good tonight, but it'll age for a decade or two and get better and better and better as the tannins drop down, the alcohol drops down, and then there's an immersion of oxygen that slowly goes through there. So we the American public likes a big red, but they want to drink it now.
Yeah. Well, and I heard somebody say something like a Napa Cab should be at least 10 years old before you drink it. Otherwise, you're only getting $50 worth of a $100 bottle. So on that note, this brings us up to Vintec, and who's sponsoring this whole Vintec Club experience for you guys out there. We've got a Vintec here in the background, and Mike's filled it up with all of his good stuff, including a bunch of Phase 5. So Nolan and Ben, that's your stuff right there. But the thing is, you just brought up a great point. If you're out wine tasting, you're getting a case here and a case there, you bring it home, you enjoy a bottle or so, and then what do you do with the leftover, the rest of the case? You have to put it somewhere. You may as well have a unit that you can rely on, that you're going to be able to have stable temperatures, the right humidity so the corks don't dry out. You got the right darkness and UV light so that you're protecting it from light, no vibration, and good air circulation. Those are the key elements for your wine cellar.
Absolutely.
And they may as well be in this. These are the same things that we replicate in these units here. So if you guys need some more room for the wine that you're going to be ordering at davisestates.com, you might want to check out vintec.com too. Once you own a Vintec, by the way, I was asked earlier, what's the Vintec Club and how do you get in the Vintec Club? The Vintec Club is part of Vintec. When you own a Vintec, you're sort of invited to be part of the club. And we do these wine community, wine tasting experiences all over the country, at least before the situation that we're in now. So we've got this idea to bring it all to you. So we're going to go all around Napa and other areas. And by the way, in the comments, leave us some areas that you think we might want to do another event in. We'd love to hear from you about where, your favorite region, whether it's Santa Barbara or Temecula or Willamette Valley or wherever it is. But wouldn't be out of the question for us to go do all that as well. So anyway, one more sip and swizzle here. This is so good.
I love my
I call it
job.
swizzle, but I really mean sniff and swirl and all that. But it's just how I am. Nice time to segue. I was saying earlier, and I didn't want to bring this whole thing down, but some real stuff happened here a couple of months ago. I was here in August, and a fire got started right back here by Hennessy Lake, and it became a big deal. It went all the way over to Vacaville and took out a lot of the Vaca Mountains right here, where the Vaca Mountain range is on the east side of the Napa Valley. The Mayacamas are over here on the west side. And then it wasn't too long after that we had the glass fire start. That was September 27th is when that thing kicked in. And it really, really did some serious damage. But my concern of watching all that was, what do people think that don't live around here of the, what do people think that this place is just destroyed and devastated? And what you always see on the news is the worst of the worst, whether it's a flood or a hurricane or a fire or whatever. I just want you guys to know, and these guys want you all to know, Napa's open for business. A very small percentage of it on the whole was damaged or destroyed. A few wineries, yes, serious stuff, lost a lot of wine. The grapes out here took the biggest brunt of everything because they got a lot of smoke damage, and smoke taint is going to be an issue with the upcoming vintage of 2020. Some people are like iffy, some people are making a lot of rosé. You're going to see a lot of 2020 rosé, by the way, and all that. But I wanted to segue into the next segment and introduce Mike to this picture. This happened on his property a while ago. What?
Oh, goodness. That is our general manager, Jessica Link. She's grabbed a fire hose. This is right in front of our offices. The the bushes are on fire right in front of our facility. People say, well, you're lucky you didn't burn. Well, the fire went right through us. Big shout out to the first responders because they saved
Yeah.
our butt.
Yeah.
They used up 75,000 gallons of water. We're here from 10 o'clock at night till 6 o'clock in the morning, and they saved us. Now, we did lose a couple of houses. We lost about 24 pieces of equipment, but we were able to open the winery, and we're hosting people, and we're back to business.
Well, listen, we're going to ask you guys to, now the tasting part, we've tasted it. Now it's time to drink it. So let's just fill up our glasses. Mike, let me top you up. You guys go ahead and fill up, and let's watch this next segment. We're going to take you to what I saw recently when I came here just right after the fire. So let's go check that out. One of the busiest and most exciting times of the year in wine country is harvest and crush. In the Northern Hemisphere, that begins in late September and typically goes through October, depending on the grape variety. And something that has become more common, especially during extended drought periods, are wildfires brought on by dry lightning strikes and seasonal high winds. In the past few years here in Northern California, these fires have grown in intensity and ferocity, devastating not only homes and businesses, but the crops and forests throughout the region. Most recently, in late September, the Glass Fire, named for Glass Mountain where the fire began, ran through some of the most beautiful and iconic vineyards and wineries in the Napa-Sonoma regions. Though there are many personal stories of loss and survival, the spirit in the area is mostly unanimous in the efforts to pick up the pieces and begin the long process of rebuilding and keeping on. The story here at Davis Estates in some ways is like many others, but when you get to know the people here and see just how intense the situation was, and that their fast thinking and taking action became critical to the ultimate survival of this place as well as their own survival, it really puts things into perspective. So here we are in a whole different part of the Davis Estates here, and this is the barn. This is the famous barn that Mike saw initially and really fell in love with, and this is sort of what some of the inspiration was for his design and some of the themes that he wanted to carry through the winery. This barn was built a while ago, and so we've got Jessica here. She's the GM, and she's going to sort of walk us through this. But I just want you to know that this is remaining intact, which is a fantastic thing, like most of the rest of the winery. But we're surrounded by charred grounds, and we're going to talk a little bit about Jessica's experience here during the fire that happened on Sunday night, September 27th, as I recall. Jessica, welcome. Thanks for joining us today. Tell us a little bit about your role here and what this was like pre-September.
I'm the general manager here. I started at our grand opening, so I've been here pretty much since day one. This place is just cool. Like,
It is.
It's just cool. Great owner, great facility, great winemaking team. Check all the boxes. Well, I got the call at 5:22 a.m. I got here about 6 a.m. I saw the fire on the ridge behind the winery and watched it all day. Prepped all day. We closed the vents in the caves. We closed all the vents in the buildings, all the HVAC, everything. We moved everything we could inside the buildings, trying to take away the fuel for the fire if it got here. It was beginning of harvest, midst of harvest. We had our processing line out on our crush pad. So that was part of the task of the day, was to break down the crush line, bring it into the buildings to try to protect it. There was one piece we couldn't bring in, and evidently we lost that piece.
It's gone, yeah.
So we set up, we have our own fire truck. Mike, for the good, the bad, the crazy, he bought a fire truck, and we have our own fire truck.
Gotta love that.
So we hooked up all the hoses to our fire hydrants to the truck, and we were ready with our own truck. Before the fire actually hit.
Yeah.
So we watched kind of all day, and the Cal Fire that was here, it was the Yountville team, the Humboldt team, we had some of the Rutherford team here.
Thank you, first responders.
Yes, oh bless you, first responders,
Yeah.
so much.
So it was slowly coming down through the Petite Syrah vineyard above the wine cave, and then later that evening it shifted around and started coming out of the north, and that's when it got speeded up and came down here and took out this hill and things.
Yeah, Cal Fire they were really optimistic that we were in this bowl, and they thought, the fire's moving to the south, we're going to keep it in the ridge and kind of help it move along that ridge line. We had a spectacular air show, and then yes, around 9 p.m. the fire kind of got away from the north of us over where Calistoga Ranch is and just sneaked over that ridge real quick. So the fire that was on the ridge to the south kind of still took that ridge, but then from the north it came down low. You hear firestorm, and it's a thing, a firestorm. The fire creates its own storm, and the embers and the whirling and everything that's going on. There was spot fires all throughout our landscaping and all around the buildings and everywhere. And then all of a sudden we're standing at the winery and you look out towards Larkmead and you're like, oh, it's now crossing Silverado Trail and it's headed down Larkmead. And when my husband and I finally left that evening, we drove about halfway down Larkmead Lane and just kind of stopped to catch our breath. It was so overwhelming. And all of a sudden this debris on fire landed on my windshield. I'm like, okay, we're not done. Let's go a little farther. Let's go a little farther. And we busted butt to get open and do what we needed for everything to be safe and back to COVID protocols. And we are happily accepting customers. Mike's visiting with customers. It's a great time to come. There's fun stories. There's things to share and thrive from the good work that Cal Fire did and all that they saved.
So that is all real stuff that we just shot here recently, and that's what we're really literally surrounded by. But we're in this beautiful barn. You saw some of the footage in the earlier shots. And by the way, we're live. We're live right now. We've got comments coming in. We've got some amazing comments coming in from people that are loving this cab. But I just wanted to give you guys a sense of how dramatic this is. There was a lot of serious fire damage. There was a lot of loss. There was a lot of heroics that went on here. And we're with Jessica Link right now. She's the GM here, the general manager, and along with Mike, who these guys have been. You started her right off the bat. You've been here since day one, right, Jessica?
I have. I started at the grand opening. That was the first day on the job, is figuring out how to get around the place.
Well, we know from the story that we just saw that you were here. You got a call, you came up here. We obviously saw you at night fighting the fire. But I mean, on a personal note, I mean, what was your sense of duty? I mean, did you just respond? I mean, a lot of us just instinctually do things because we're driven to do that. What were some of the real things that went through your head when that was going on?
Can I say, oh shit? Because that's really what
She just said it.
Honestly, so personally at home, I was affected by the Tubbs fire. So this wasn't my first rodeo, unfortunately. So I kind of took what I learned from that and went, I have an idea what to do here. And I put that in motion with the people that were here. Mike had all the tools. We had the fire truck. We had the hoses laid out. We did everything. So this is home. I mean, Mike is amazing. The winery's amazing. Our team's amazing. And this is my work home. And I care about my work home to no end. And so it was really about kind of protecting home. And that's what went into effect. And it was Cal Fire. Praise Cal Fire. They did a phenomenal job.
Again, thanks for first responders. And Mike, you were home. and sort of monitoring what was going on and just counting on her phone calls and updates and all that. That must have just been really dramatic for you, just wanting to be here, but having to make her flight arrangements and all that to get up here. What was that sort of that first couple of hours like until you actually got up here?
Well, we finally talked when Cal Fire, and she was fighting a fire with, a sweater and a pair of jeans on, and Cal Fire's like, that's not firefighting equipment, you're out of here.
Right.
And so they kicked her and her husband off the property, and I said, be safe, it's you and your husband, we can replace the winery, we can't replace you.
Right.
So they left, and we thought we'd come up the next morning and just see piles of ashes, because the fire literally went right through us.
Yeah.
And what happened is that we drove up, went through a CHP stop, a Napa police stop, and then right down the road here, we were stopped again by the sheriff.
Right.
And I still couldn't see the winery, and I told him, it's like, that's our winery.
Right.
So he let us through, and
Right.
I saw the silhouettes and started crying like a 2-year-old little
Right.
girl. And then I text everybody in
We're
a group
good.
text. It's like, it's still here.
Oh, nice.
Now, the houses were gone. I had probably 24 pieces of equipment, trucks and tractors and everything that all burnt out,
Water, power, you name it. It was
all gone.
And-
but they
and-
saved the buildings.
Right, and that's where we are right now. It's just stunning that these buildings have been saved. And so many other wineries did lose parts of their cellars, or they lost part of their inventory. These guys had their stuff stashed way back in the cave. And one of the smartest things you did, and I didn't even think about it, there's vents, like we're talking about air circulation in this thing. These guys have air circulation in their caves as well. And she went and turned it all off so it wouldn't suck the smoke into the cave. Smart thinking. I like that. Bill wants to know, did the fires affect the wine? So Bill, I'm going to let Mike answer that, but let me give my first little 2 cents here, Mike. The fire, there's a thing called smoke taint, and the concern right now moving forward is some of these vintages, and this is literally all over California, because I live up in the Sierra foothills, and we were affected heavily for 47 days of just straight smoke, of hazardous smoke. So you don't even need to have the fire near you, but if they sit in that smoke for long enough, you can get what's called smoke taint. But Mike, go ahead and tell us about what your plans are and what the fires do to grapes.
So first off, we've got 2018, 2019 in barrels in the cave, and they're still aging. Because Jessica shut off the ventilation system, it didn't affect any of the wines that are aging in the caves. What it did affect is the 2020s that were still on the vine. We had smoke taint, we had heat, and the combination of those two things, in our case on the vineyard here, ruined all the grapes. So they're not processable, and people often say, well, we like a little smoke taint in our grapes. Well, you might like it in your wine, but it tastes like somebody put a cigar out in your wine glass if you actually try it, which we processed some Petit Verdot and let the staff try it. Not so good. So we've had to let those grapes hang on the vines. We'll cut them and rototill them in the ground, and they'll be fertilizer, and we're hoping for a good 2021.
So for the wine geeks out there, I've got to ask you, since I've got you on the spot.
Sure.
So over the years, my impression of smoke taint, especially living in this area and being like submerged in smoke for weeks at a time, is you think that the smoke is just sort of surrounding the grape, and that a little bit of that smell, or that, not even ash, but just the smell of the smoke will sort of stay on the skins. Therefore, when you go and press the skins, it'll put that flavor into the grape. Then I spoke to some other enologists that said, actually, it's the bottom of the leaf, which is called the stomata, where all the oxygen comes in and it processes, that's where the smoke actually comes in, and that you can actually taste the grapes, which I have in a number of these vineyards. You can't really taste the smoke on the grape cluster, but it's when it starts doing that fermenting process,
yes,
is that all of a sudden all the molecules shift, and that's when all of a sudden that smoke taint comes out. Has that been your experience?
When you start processing the grapes, it's like 0.5 is detectable by human taste buds.
Okay.
But we've had some that have gone up to 100,
Wow.
120,
Yeah.
which is
briquettes. They're
Oh,
like throwing a briquette in your mouth.
Oh my goodness.
Or
It's all-
licking an ashtray.
It's very much like, and it's all relative
Not
to
that I've ever
how
licked an ashtray.
Actually, you feel like it. If you've
Right.
tasted the Petit Verdot we made it,
Right.
you go, I licked it. It's really about proximity and length of time. So the grape is exposed, and it's how long is it exposed, how close to after veraison, how close to harvest. There's so many factors that we don't
Right.
know about yet, but it's not only encompassing in the skin, it gets into the pulp inside the fruit as well. So, and then it's exacerbated through the fermentation process, like you
Okay,
mentioned,
yeah.
that really accelerates it, and then it starts to go off the charts depending on the length and.
So for 2020, you guys will have a Chardonnay that got harvested before all this happened,
Yes.
and it's in the southern part of the valley, which is 30 miles away.
Yes.
But as far as the reds go, there's not going to be a lot of 2020 from this winery, and some are choosing to take the chance. But you guys are just saying, nope, your name's on the bottle, you're just not going there?
Well, there's a chemical process that you can send it through filtration, but it strips out all the taste.
Yeah.
And you end up with alcoholic grape juice. And so that wasn't our intent. Now we have a Sauvignon Blanc we harvested beforehand. We have a Pinot Noir that we've made some rosé. So that's iffy, could go
Okay.
either way. And then we have the Chardonnay. But as far as red wines go, we do not have any 2020 red wines.
Yep. Well, we're getting, Laura wants to say, Jessica, you are the hero. And also, Biz Majors says she rocks. So,
does?
yes, she does. So, cheers, Jessica.
Oh, cheers, you guys.
Love your work.
Cheers.
You got a good one here, Mike.
She's
Definitely
awesome.
amazing. Well, listen, we're almost close to the end. We said we'd take an hour for you guys to do some really beautiful wine tasting. Hope you like the Chard. Hope you like the Cab. Love to hear a little bit more comments. I mean, have you finished the glass? Do you have a number of people there? That's another thing I was curious about, is how many of you are there in any given place? Let us know. Are you hanging out by yourself? Are you a couple? Are there 4 or 5 of you together? We won't tell Gavin Newsom. It's okay. But anyway, I wanted to let you guys know also that the Vintec Club, we really appreciate your enthusiasm about wine. We are a big wine community, and our deal is just sharing the passion of wine. We're going to go to wineries and try all kinds of wine, and that's what we do. And we want, obviously, that's what you do too. We want to gift you guys a thank you when we're all done here. I've got a wine journal. I don't know if any of you ever used a wine journal, but actually these are pretty cool because you can, just like what we're doing here, you can take some notes. Each page is basically a form you can fill out. The Cab from Davis Ranch, or Davis Estates, what year it is, your tasting notes, what you thought it was buttery, or it was blueberries or blackberries. That's kind of cool. Get a Vintec pen, and then you got to be able to open your stuff, because we're not going to any wineries that have screw caps, just so you know, all right? So you're going to need one of these too. So the Vintec Club, it's all about the wine experience, and of course the beautiful Vintec unit in the background. Mike is going to can't wait for Nolan and Ben and Thomas and all you guys to come out here. TJ, all you guys, Craig. Bill says make a tawny. That's a port. I'm not sure if you're a port. Are you a port fan?
Well, that takes a whole, I mean, I love port,
Yeah,
yes, I'm
yeah,
a port
yeah,
fan.
yeah.
But that's where you pour another alcohol in with the wine.
Fortification.
And, yes, and we don't have that license here.
Okay. Well, there's your answer. No tawny.
But we do make a dessert wine, so we substitute for that, and we have a late harvest Cab Franc.
Oh,
that we
awesome.
make.
It's 16.5% alcohol.
Right. By the way, late harvest just means there's way more sugar in the grapes when you pick it. That's one of the little nuances that probably Mike mentioned earlier on the Chardonnay. They pick at 23 bricks or so for their Chard. That there's just enough sugar there to override all that sort of bitter acidity and that greenness effect, but it isn't like a Lodi Chardonnay where it's just a giant sugar bomb out there. So what's next for you guys? What's next? I know you're getting ready to redo some planting. As you said, you're a farmer. You've got, you're not letting this hold you down. You guys are really resilient. You guys are really positive about the future. I love that attitude. It's not just here, it's through Napa, but I mean, really, it's like everybody just lit up, said, we're going to get past this, we're going to get through this. What's your next steps?
Well, we're entertaining customers right now. We've got the customers on the patio. We're restricted outdoor tasting, and then we're going to plant about 4 acres with some new vineyards. We're repairing everything, and we're open.
Very good. Nathan has 3 people and a kid drinking grape juice. Well, that kid's probably going to be a sommelier one of these days, if that position still exists, if restaurants even still exist. Well, cheers to all you guys. Thank you so much for joining us. This has just been a wonderful Vintec Club experience. I'm so stoked that we could bring Napa to you, right into your house, into your living rooms, and just let everybody know this is what we do. Don't forget to drop a couple of comments. What did you think? What could we do better? What places do you want to go next? Let us know. And we love you guys. And until next time, cheers.
Cheers.